every dad out there who's listening and can relate to, yelling more than they want to, wants to. I can guarantee you, you don't want to yell. I know it.
Ever had one of those moments where your kid pushes every button you've got, and before you know it, you're yelling? You're not alone. Today, we're going to be talking about how to keep calm when parenting gets heated. And it never does it? And why staying cool can change everything for your kids and you. So today, we're going to be talking about being calm and not yelling, how to stay cool when it matters most. We're going to look at 3 areas: why we yell. Then we're going to look at a calm reset. And then finally, building a calm culture at home. Drew, you ready for this one? You told me before we put the record button on that you're ready for this one. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm ready for this one because it's been an important part of my journey. It's also been, it's hard. Let's be real. This is really hard, and I think a lot of dads, um, they know it's hard. They see themselves struggling in this area, and then they beat themselves up over it, or they've got people around them who beat them up for it. And I don't think that helps the situation. And so I think this is a good conversation because I want to share from what I've learned in the process to shift and create what I think is a much calmer, more peaceful, more connected, more enjoyable atmosphere in the relationship with kids. Plus, also how to handle those situations where you're not getting the support you need to be able to make the shifts that I know every dad out there who's listening and can relate to, yelling more than they want to, wants to. I can guarantee you, you don't want to yell. I know it. So I think it's an important conversation.
All right, good stuff. So before we move forward, you are watching or listening to Dad Central, a parenting podcast that to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. And as always, our show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man. And because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. All right, let's get into this one. This should be another interesting conversation. First things first, why do we yell, Drew? Why do we yell?
I can't speak for everyone else, but I can share what I've learned in the process is there was a feeling of helplessness, powerless. That was my experience in recognizing and understanding what was going on in terms of why I was finding myself yelling, especially way more than I wanted to, or way more than I knew was good for myself or for my kids. So that's my lived experience. And I think as we've gone through this path, I've learned and understood just the importance of these underlying emotions that men, let's just be honest, are not socialized or even taught how to manage or how to experience them in healthy ways so that they don't spill out onto others. So that's a little bit of, from my perspective. But Ed, you've got lots of wisdom to share too. So why do we yell?
I think part of it is also maybe how we were raised. And for myself, I grew up in a household that my dad yelled. And sometimes we copy or we emulate what we replicate. So I grew up in a household with a lot of yelling, and I didn't know any other way. So that is one of the reasons, and also just influences around. There's a belief that force and yelling will get you what you want to achieve. And that isn't always the case. And a lot of times it causes more damage than real progress. And I think also we have to look at how yelling impacts kids and the relationship. Because a lot of times you could be yelling in the moment, but you're not thinking about the after effect, the after impacts that it can have on your child, could also have on the family, also on yourself because it adds stress to yourself. But there's also common triggers that can induce the yelling: fatigue, you may feel disrespected, there's time pressures. There could be a myriad of reasons that go on through that. So that's my add on to that.
Yeah, and let's if I can add as well, we're basically going into fight, flight, or freeze. Right? You're getting this adrenal, this baked in physiological response because somewhere in your brain, you're essentially recognizing some form of a threat, right? And so that's the important part of the self awareness of what am I actually feeling? What are the thoughts? What are the scripts? What are the unconscious or subconscious beliefs that are actually operating inside me that result in having a physiological response of fight, flight, or freeze, which is ultimately what drives that cortisol being rushed, and then you react as opposed to respond. I mean, the good news is, and we'll talk more about this, is you can actually rewire that process. You can actually learn to take control and manage that built off of awareness, and then be able to make the shifts and rewire your brain for calmer responses as opposed to reactions.
Exactly. I also want to just add a really quick story in regards to the impact it can have. A number of years ago, when I was working at Canada's only father-focused family center, I had a father come in, and we were on a storefront sort of street location. He came in and he asked me, "How you doing today?" I go, "Fine." And he says, "Look at my son." His son wasn't there. So he thought his son was about maybe 3 or 4 years old, and he thought his son walked in with him, and his son wasn't there. So he freaked out because, yeah, obviously you would, your parent. And within about, he came back in after 2 or 3 minutes, and then a lady from the neighborhood that we were in from the street brought in his child. And it was like, it was good that, all that. But what the father did, he yelled at that child for a good 5 minutes. And the impact I was going through, that impact that had on the child, and I pulled him aside, say, that wasn't a really cool thing to do from my lens. I say, do you know the potential impact that not only has on your little son then, but for years to come on your child? I'll never forget that story. It just really impacted. And this happened a number of years ago, and I can remember it like it happened 10, 15 minutes ago.
Yeah. Well, since you brought it up, let's quickly debrief that. What I think happened is that he was afraid. And men in particular don't know how to handle difficult feelings like feeling fear. He was what could have happened to my son? I don't know. Like, and instead of recognizing his own fear and learning to process and breathe through the fear created this fight, flight, or freeze reaction. And so what did he do? He went to the default, which is what many men experience growing up, is the default of like, I can express anger safely, instead of recognizing what he was feeling and then thinking about what would my child be feeling. I'm an adult and I was afraid, but what would a child whose I in the sense of security in the world for them, and what would they be feeling, and then be able to meet his child or go and consider what his child would be feeling and say, like, I'm so sorry that we got separated. I'm so sorry that it was probably scary for you. If it's a 3, 4, 5-year-old, they don't know, and they're only ruled by emotion. And so to be able to relate to and meet his child there and support and encourage his child was a huge, I'd say, missed opportunity. And instead, he left, as you said, probably
Mhm,
some significant um, pain in his
mhm,
child from that
mhm.
experience. So, anyways, let's move forward and figure out
Yeah,
how do we rewire ourselves so that we can do this and support our children as well as supporting ourselves.
yeah, the calm, we're talking about the calm reset. So what are some practical tools, Drew, that you want to share with our family in regards to this?
Yeah, well, we talked briefly about this in another episode, but it's essentially stop, drop, and breathe is the, I think, most powerful technique. Why? Because when our bodies are flooded with cortisol, it's basically that Your mammalian brain, it's like there's a threat, like there's a tiger jumping out of the woods. You basically got to run for your life. That's literally what's going on inside your body. And so the sense of being flooded with this cortisol in these situations where you're triggered, your child does something, or you have strong emotions that you don't really know how to handle, you haven't been socialized or understood how to actually process them. You're you have to actually, the only way you can really do it physiologically is breathing. And you have to also use your mind to control the natural body's reaction of instinct, fight, flight, or freeze, to say it's not an emergency. Guess what? There's not a tiger jumping out of the woods trying to eat me. Because when your child is having a tantrum on the floor in the middle of the store, and what's really going on for you is like you're embarrassed and you feel like people think I'm a bad dad or I'm a bad parent, you're going into shit. There's a tiger coming at me. Well, guess what? There's not a tiger. It's just a child who's ruled by emotion, who's upset, and who cares what anyone else thinks in the store? Because guess what happens? My child is showing me that they need help. They need support. So we have to control ourselves in that moment by having a mantra. It's not an emergency, or my child's having a hard time. They need me, or stop. Just say to yourself, stop, drop. Okay, breathe and breathe, because the breathing takes you out of the fight, flight, or freeze and helps you actually access your higher order thinking, your prefrontal cortex, as opposed to your brainstem, which is the where you're reacting from, right? You have to override it with your brain. And so that's what the mantra or the talking is: stop, drop, and breathe. And then the breathing helps your body actually come out of that adrenal overload, essentially, and want to react. So, sorry, I had to
No problem.
break
It's
that
all
down.
good.
Stop,
No.
number one, pause.
Mhm.
Don't react. Stop yourself. And this is the greatest challenge I've had, right? Then you got to drop your agenda, your idea, or recognize what's actually going on for you. What's the script, right? I gotta do something here. You don't have to. And then breathing gives you that opportunity to create some space to actually access your brain and say, okay, what does my child actually need here? What's most important in this situation right now? Is my child about to get run over in the street and I have to react? Or is my child simply having a hard time and I just need to be able to meet them where they're at? So I think that's the core of it. So actionable tools is stop, drop, and breathe. That's number one. Then there's another thing you could say: grounding yourself physically, or employing those who are around you. Like I've worked with Kristen. Kristen, if you notice me getting to a certain point, just come and I want you to put your hand on my arm and then say Drew, and just look me in the eye. Like I'm building support for myself with my partner to say, hey, here's a physical touch, here's a connection, and it's pulling me away from my going down this path when she can see and understand how I might be getting frustrated or amped up. So I think that those are two practical pieces. I'm going to stop there because, as you know, Ed, I can go off on this one because I think it's been such a challenge for me, but
Yeah.
I've seen such huge growth and the
Mm.
difference it makes because it's so powerful.
Excellent. Well done, and we're really celebrating your progress in this area. I also want to no, I'm being serious, and it's a journey, right? So we work on getting a little bit better each day when it comes to things like this. And I just want to add, using a calm tone and body language is as leadership, not weakness. So you don't have to be yelling intense. Calm tone and body language, right body language is leadership. And also a quote here: calm is contagious. So when you, dad, lead with calm, your kids will follow. Calm is contagious. So when you, dad, lead with calm, your kids will follow. So let's talk about our third thing today: building a calm culture at home. Thoughts, Drew?
Yeah, this is always your, we'll say, responsibility, but also opportunity. And I think I had to go through this with my children in terms of they would get very reactive. They would get very, you know, and so reminding them as well as modeling it, okay, Jada, please remember we use a calm, kind voice. So that became one of the mantras that they heard from me a lot. There was a couple of things that they heard from me. One was, A feeling is just a feeling. It's not in control of you. That was something that I repeated over and over and over. And then I had to live that out as well. I had to realize, Drew, a feeling is just a feeling. It's not in control of you. So spoke it out, modeled it, reminded them in these difficult moments, but also reminded them in other moments as well. Then reminded them, okay, use a calm, kind voice when you're speaking with each other. Help them understand and name some of their emotions, right? That's important. And then the other thing is, we all are human and we'll make mistakes. So what do you do in those instances? Do you apologize, recognize the mistake, go to your child, tell them you're sorry, ask for them to forgive you, and then try and repair the relationship, right? Moving forward. Those are, I think, really important steps. We all are going to make mistakes, and our children are amazingly forgiving, but we have to be willing to humble ourselves and step into their world and acknowledge that what we did and how we did it was not helpful or may have been destructive. So that modeling it and showing it, or what's the word I'm thinking, socializing it as part of the day to day is powerful. I'm going to add one more quick story. Is also finding ways to bring laughter and fun and kind of silliness into these tense moments is another powerful tool that we haven't talked about. But, I had this thing with the kids where I would say, how many hugs do you need a day? The research says you need like 12 to 15 hugs a day just to facilitate growth, right? Like 10 to maintain or something. So they would playfully always get the wrong, no hugs. And I'd be like, that's the wrong answer. And I'd run after them and I'd kind of fake tickle them, or I'd say, oh, the claw's coming after you. And what would happen in those moments, it would shift what would be a tense, sort of, agitating moment into more of this like fun, playful, and inevitably almost every single time, even if my kids were in bad moods and they were like, they would shift into this play. And then next thing you know, whatever was causing tension would kind of evaporate and we'd all be able to reconnect and then just be able to move forward. So that's a powerful tool. Maybe we'll do another episode just specifically on that tactic of leveraging play and silliness and spontaneity.
Excellent. Only thing I'll add to what Drew has shared, also making sure you have repairing moments when you do yell. So lead with an apology, also do reconnecting, and also rebuild the trust. And another quote here, you can't always control your kids' behavior, but you can always control your own response. So as we start wrapping up today's episode, three things that we covered today. We covered why we yell. We also covered the calm reset. And then finally, we talked about building a calm culture at home. And some key takeaways: awareness turns reactivity into choice. Then we have calm isn't a weakness, it's leadership. And then every moment of repair strengthens connection. So you don't have to be a perfect dad, just a present one. Every time you choose calm over yelling, you're building safety and trust in your home. And that's what real strength looks like. Drew, what resource do we have for our family today?
I think we have the 7-step guide to stop yelling on our website. Great resource. Simply download it, follow through it, and do the work, and you will, I promise, see a difference.
Excellent. Well, as always, want to say thank you for giving the most important thing, your time, to hang out with us, and looking forward to seeing you soon. As always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace, and maybe we'll do a part 2 of this. I think Drew wants to. You could tell by his energy today. Be well and keep the faith. Take care.